The third and final theory that we're going to deal with in terms of distributive justice is Rawls's contractarian approach. So let's get into it. So the basic concept Rawls is working with here is that of a social contract between citizens or people in a society. And what he's doing is imagining that all of the people are agreeing to these rules. So imagine if you got everyone together to agree the rules. And he says, well, if we did that, what principles would people choose? So again, you can see the importance of thought experiments in terms of moral philosophy to helping us think about different states or different systems that we might be able to put in place in the world. So Rawls's idea is based upon something called the original position. Okay. In the original position, everyone is free and equal. Each person can negotiate in their own best interests. Each person negotiates behind, and this is a really critical concept, the veil of ignorance. What does that mean? It means that people don't know where they're going to end up in society. So before they agree to the rules, they don't know if they're going to be smart or dumb or rich or poor or attractive or unattractive, or have their full abilities or be disabled, or they don't know anything about where they're going to end up in society. So imagine we've got to enter a contract where we're all free and equal, where we've all got to negotiate in our best interests, but we don't know where we're going to end up in our societal system. That is what Rawls meant by the original position. So what he's really setting up here is a way of agreement that will hopefully lead to the fairest outcome possible. A bit like when you get two kids and you get one to cut and the other to choose, right? The first kid is going to cut them as equally as they can because they know that the second kid is going to take the biggest piece if there is a bigger piece. So it's setting up a system that leads to a just result. Now, what Rawls believed was that if under those negotiating conditions of the original position, people are going to act conservatively. They're not going to gamble with their future. And that will lead to two principles of justice, or two principles for the system of distribution, of distributive justice that we're interested in. So the two key principles of justice are we should maximize each individual's liberty or freedom as much as possible. So we really should try not to constrain people, and everyone should have that same level of freedom. Okay, so no one's going to get extra freedoms. We're going to have this equality of freedom in the system, and we should try and maximize that. Now, he thought that there would be social and economic inequalities. So it doesn't mean that everyone will have equality of outcome. Instead, what we have is equality of opportunity. Okay, so provided everyone has an equal opportunity to progress in the system, there's no unfair discrimination or discrimination on the wrong factors. Okay, because when we choose people to do a job, just say you've got a plumber, you discriminate, right? You want the best plumber. That's a fair discrimination. What we don't want is unfair discrimination. So that means all positions under this system need to be open to everyone. And really critically, the system would be the one that gives the greatest expected benefit for the least advantaged members of society. This was also called the minimax principle, which we'll come back to. So this is kind of central. All of these are key points though, right? Maximize liberty, a bit like Nozick like that, right? Trying to maximize liberty, but also then saying, look, we want everyone to have equality of opportunity to A, and we also want to maximize the outcome for the worst off in society. That is the system that people who don't know where they're going to end up in society would agree to. So I think liberty, having personal and political freedoms, is fairly self-explanatory why people would agree to it. I think also 2A, the idea of equal opportunity is pretty clear to people. That's what you'd want to agree with if you didn't know where you were going to end up. But the difference principle is one that can be difficult for people to grasp. So let's say we've got 4 groups. This could be 4 individuals or 4 groups, A, B, C, and D. And let's say we have 3 options in terms of our system. So option 1 means group A will benefit by 60, group B 55, group C 50, group D 45. You get the idea? Option 2, group A 130. Okay, so what we could do if we were a utilitarian analysis is look at the one that maximised the number. But that's not what Rawls is saying. What Rawls is saying is you look for each group and you find the minimum number. So in option 1, the minimum number is 45. Group D benefits 45. In option 2, the minimum number is 60. Okay? Then in option 3, the minimum number is 55. Okay, so if I look across these, the number is 55. So which number is the maximum from these minimums? This one. 60 is the highest minimum. And so Rawls says, provided we have liberty and provided we have equal opportunity, we will choose option 2, okay, because that makes the worst off group the best off out of all the options. It maximizes the minimum. Yeah. Maximizes the minimum. I got that wrong, yeah? Maximum. Okay, so it maximizes the minimum. So we're going to flick backwards and forwards a little bit to make this point. But if we were behind the veil of ignorance, that says we don't know where we'll end up, don't know our position in society. Then if we're a risk taker, we'd choose option 3, right? Because that means we could end up in group A and that would give us the biggest benefit, right? So that would be if we're a risk taker. But remember, Rawls has said that people will reason conservatively. So people won't want to take that risk if they don't know where they're going to end up. Second, if you insisted upon equality of outcome, you would choose option 1, right? Because here, the difference between any group is minimized. But that's not what Rawls says. Rawls thinks people will choose freely and equally in their own best interest for option 2 to maximize their worst possible outcome, the maximin principle. As with all theories that we find around ethics and morals, there are criticisms of Rawls's approach. The first is that the entire thing is unrealistic and too abstract. Really, what we want from society is shaped by who we are and our background, and so therefore the idea that we could even believe or think as though we were behind this veil of ignorance is just a furphy. It's too unreal to be taken seriously. The second criticism is that participants may not actually choose conservatively. Some might be risk takers, and therefore that would undermine the logic behind this system. And a third key criticism is that this system might not be stable. So if you take Nozick's Wilt Chamberlain, or you remember we looked at Messi as our example, if you take the sports person example as an example of free trade under a system, you still end up with these quite different dynamic systems of distribution if we allow liberty. And so therefore, while we might have this kind of ideal start to a system that maximizes the minimum position, we're going to end up in a stable situation that might not reflect that. Okay, so that's the content for this particular week, and in fact that's kind of the end of the content in terms of our ethics component where we focus in on ethics. Next week we start moving on to the law section, so look forward to that.